Yes, you're going? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the early days when you first started in architecture in Mexico City. You started in your own practice in Mexico City?
Well, yes. First I worked with Obregón Santa Celia, who was a very, very well-known architect in those days, and also with Villagrán, but less with Villagrán than with Obregón Santa Celia. But after a few years, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, something like that, I started to work by myself.
What was it like when you first started? Was it difficult?
Well, it was very difficult, very, very difficult, but because in those times there were few architects in Mexico, and even the profession of architects were not very well differentiated from the engineer.
Ah.
It was, as I have told you, the School of Architecture in Mexico was the first one because it is in 1783, the year was founded the School of Architecture in Mexico. That means almost 2,000 years, almost. I think now, in 3 more years, it will be 200 years. But even so, and even we have a very, very long tradition about architecture, even so, in those moments, there were few architects, so there were much more well-known the engineers than the architecture, the architects. And also, don't forget that for instance, in the moment I finished the school, that means in 1930, well, it was 12 years that the revolution has finished. So in those moments, you can do architecture in the moment you have fights with.
Well, the revolution was going on.
Revolution, you can do architecture. So it was very, very little construction, very little construction. In that moment, I remember, I mean, even Mexico has not yet arrived to have 1 million. Nowadays we have 14, but in this moment it was really, well, it was a capital, but if we look to the world, really Mexico was well, a little country.
A young country.
No,
not young in years, no, but in sophistication.
No, it was a provincial country. Provincial.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, very provincial. Everybody knows each other. It was very provincial.
So you studied with Villagrán in
well,
school?
I have studied, and we asked for Villagrán to give the first, the first class in when I was a student. So I became the first disciple of him.
And then when you graduated, you were able to travel?
Well, I told you that I was able to travel because I won a lottery. moment I won the lottery, and in those moments where the dollar and the peso really, really, really has a value, it was very important.
And so you were able to travel to Europe?
Yes.
Through Europe?
During 1 year, yes.
And then when you came back, you started practicing?
Exactly, exactly.
How was the acceptance of modern design in the 1930s in Mexico?
It was not accepted.
No.
That's what is difficult of ourselves.
Yes.
Because we have to do a real fight to impose the new ideas, but really a fight that if you can convince
Yes.
the how you call them, not the people, but the people who you talk with.
The leaders?
No, the people.
The clients?
With the clients. You lose the job,
Yes.
or you do what they want.
Yeah.
And we were young, and we don't want to do what they want. So we lose a lot of jobs. And it was difficult to us to convince the people to do what we thought it was a good attitude. Maybe it was not, but what we thought it was the real good attitude.
Where did the ideas come from to begin introducing modern design?
Well, in the moment we arrive at the ideas of what we call the functionalism. And the functionalism in Mexico was a very important and a very strong how you call doctrine or philosophy.
Yes.
A very strong one. And even in Mexico, it grows to most radical positions, the most radical position in account of the tradition of the functionalism. I think maybe, I think really theoretical. I don't think there were many countries who were so radical in the functionalism like Mexico.
And that influence came from Europe, the functionalist.
But in Mexico they grew to be radical. In certain moment there were young architects, companions of myself, who think that the architecture was not enough, that it was, they so called, a science. A science and a very, I could call it, a very true, not true, a very true science. And they told that art has nothing to do with architecture. It was very interesting, this moment. It was in the first years of the 30s. Very interesting in these moments in Mexico. And the theoretical discussions were almost were trying to fight each other.
Yeah?
Yes, it was very important.
And then later on they became less.
Well, later they started to understand that what they have said in the moment of most tension. It was not even possible to live. That means theoretical, you can say that the architecture is a science, but only theoretical.
Yeah.
But you can live it. You can live it as architecture like science. Only if you consider that the architecture is construction, only construction.
So it's the science of building.
But it is not architecture.
Yeah. So art came back into architecture.
Eh? Yes. After several years, yes, they started to understand that it was not possible to live this. And even the leaders, companions of myself, the leaders of that extreme position of the functionalism, even they make statements absolutely different, the contrary of what they have told 10 years ago, before.
Yes. Yeah, they had grown to another point of view.
Exactly.
How did you feel the influence from Europe mixed with the cultural background of the Mexican architect?
Well, I think at that moment the most important influence, I think it was, well, direct from Le Corbusier, of the thinking thoughts of Le Corbusier. I have told you, even more than his own works. More important the thoughts of Le Corbusier than his own works. But nowadays I understand in those moments I didn't realize that what was well behind Le Corbusier was the thinking of Gropius.
Yeah?
Yes, of course. The real important man of thinking in those days was Gropius. What has happened that I think now that Le Corbusier has a real power and a real importance of express himself. And he was real a man of our time in the way that he was a man of publicity.
We would say he's a good PR, public relations man.
Extraordinary. That was not the kind of Gropius. Gropius was much more scholar.
Yes.
Much more. And a thinking, he has a thought, very German thought, very disciplined thought.
Yes.
But I think that the man who is behind all that moment is Gropius.
I think the only time, one of the few times that they were in direct, in touch with each other was perhaps working in the Baron's office in Germany when Gropius was a very young man. I mean when Le Corbusier was a very young man.
Well, all of them.
Yeah.
Gropius was 3 years older than Le Corbusier. 3 years older. But I think you can't compare anything in the modern world about than the Bauhaus. That's the most important thing.
And you think that
the Bauhaus is what everything who have started the new thinking, not only in construction, but in the understanding of the new methods and the new ideas of what art is in account of man, came from Bauhaus.
had a very strong influence around the whole world.
But in that moment, we thought that Le Corbusier was the, let us see, the leader influence. But when you start to think after you are a little older, no, it's Gropius.
That's very interesting. What do you think, where do you think the influences are coming from today?
But I think the modern world is dominated only by one or two people, like always it has been. And I think all the modern ideas come really, I think, nowadays from States. Even if they don't want.
If they don't want to admit it, you mean? It's still...
Even if they think they don't have those ideas, they communicate even though.
You're talking about the technology?
Of course.
Yeah.
Not the technology. More important, the philosophy. Much more important.
Who do you think has influence today philosophically from the United States?
Well, I can tell you about the names, and they are unimportant. They are maybe unimportant. The important is that the ideas are there. For instance, I think in the moment I say that Bauhaus was so important, it is because in this moment, really, Germany has a very strong influence all over the world.
In the world of design at that point?
Not the design, in the world of philosophy. It's much more important than design. The design came later.
You mean prior to the Bauhaus?
Eh?
Prior to the Bauhaus. You're talking about...
Well, no, the Bauhaus, yes, because the Bauhaus is not a design, it is a philosophy. It is a way of living.
And that's the influence that you felt had so much importance.
That's why I think.
It's very interesting to hear you say that today when those influences are being played down. Because today people don't look at the Bauhaus as a strong influence.
Oh.
But it's interesting for one who lived through those years.
No, I don't understand because we are leaving the Bauhaus.
Yeah.
Nowadays we are leaving.
You still feel the influences.
We are seated in a chair, that behind this chair is the idea of the Bauhaus behind this chair. when you travel, for instance, in the countries who has not yet, or when they don't have yet arrived at the Bauhaus, you can think what that means. For instance, when I traveled to Russia, back it was in, I think, 22 years ago, 58, I think, 58. Yes, maybe, 58. 57, 58. Well, I remember very well, I was were traveling with a great deal of architects, because it was, it was the IA.
The International?
No, UIA.
The International Architectural Association.
In 58, well. And after we have traveled, let's think, 15 days. 15 days, I told them, are you uncomfortable? And everyone told me, yes, we are. And why you are uncomfortable? I told them. Nobody could tell me. But I tell them, I am going to tell you why you are uncomfortable. Because we are not living the feel of the art, of the modern art here in any way.
Because it was suppressed.
No, because they didn't know, I think, even the name of the Bauhaus. And for instance, I told them, have you noticed that we are seated in a chair that is awful? Yes, it's awful, the chair. But have you noticed that how you call that? No. What do you call that? Of a chair.
The seat.
Eh?
The seat?
No. What do you call it?
Material?
The material. How you call that?
This is canvas.
Eh?
Canvas.
Well, no. In general, the material, fabric for a chair.
Yes.
The fabric is even much more awful than the chair. Yes, really, it is true. And have you noticed that, for instance, the lamp is much more awful than the chair and the material? It is, all things were really not only old, but out of the thinking of the modern world. And we started, after you lived there 15 or 20 days, you started to feel uncomfortable.
I feel that you felt that way, and one feels that way, even today, because modern art was not permitted to develop there. After 1930, there was that period of the 20s that was very creative, when the constructivist artists and architects...
But don't forget what means, for instance, the Bauhaus. The thinking of the Bauhaus was very important. That was that the modern world was very developed, very. And the art was beyond. If you notice, for instance, how you call it? Refrigerator? No, you don't have the...
Yes,
refrigerator. Well,
refrigeration?
well, but the
refrigerator itself.
If you see a refrigerator before Bauhaus, you see it is an awful artifact. It's awful. But it works. Maybe it works as well as the nowadays refrigerator. Maybe. But the
housing.
The housing was horrible. Horrible. Why? Because this housing was made by the man who was only how you call it?
Technician?
Fabricante,
manufacturer.
And he manufactured a thing who works, but for him it was not important if it was really a thing
that's well designed.
Well designed. For me it was important, was unimportant. Also if you take, how you call with what you iron?
Yes.
Ironing.
Yes.
You have noticed the ironing of, for instance, in 1920? It was awful. And you have noticed how is an iron machine nowadays. It's beautiful. That's Bauhaus.
Okay. You really think that
Hey?
that the Bauhaus?
No, I'm not thinking. It's what it is.
All right.
No, it's not my idea.
The strongest influence.
No, it is not a discussion of if I have, if it is true what I am saying.
No, I'm not
No,
questioning that, but I'm trying to pinpoint what you are saying, that you feel that the Bauhaus was the strongest influence of modern times.
Exactly. We are living in the ideas of the Bauhaus. What that means, the idea of the Bauhaus confirmed the modern world. And the modern world is with the forms given by the Bauhaus.
That have developed since those days. Yeah. That's true. I can agree with that.
And you can notice absolutely before the Bauhaus and after Bauhaus. It's like when you are praying, before the how you call the Naissance, or how you call the
Birth?
The birth of Christ and the after Christ was birth, it's the same.
Let's go back for a minute to your work. If you had to choose just a few projects, because you have had such a large practice for so many years. How many years have you been practicing? Since 1930?
50 years.
That's marvelous, and you're still actively practicing. If you had to choose just a few projects, which ones would be the ones that you're the most proud of?
I have told you that the one I work with more pleasure is the housing, because housing express the more closely how man is. House and men are absolutely identified. Absolutely. So that's why I am very fond of the design of a house, because really you are dealing with what is the man and what and how differentiated or not is this man, what he thinks, what he feels, what he wants, what he needs, how we live. No, non-programmer you can find more related to man than the house.
So that has given you the most satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Private residence or housing in general?
Well, housing in general, but really private means more specific. A private house is more specific than the community housing. Even though a community house also expresses very important things, because he expresses the community, the community house express what are the general feelings of a community, not only of a man, but of a community.
Okay.
You were at the National University of Mexico.
That's right. Yes.
But the old one, yes?
I studied the old one, and I have my thesis, my last work in the new one.
The new one. Ah, so you graduated from the new university. In what, 1954?
1954, yes. That's right.
Yes.
Sure.
What was your thesis project?
My thesis was about cultural center for Mexico. Yes. I have an honorific distinction of my thesis, and I have a very congratulations, because Diego Rivera is a very good painter.
Diego Rivera,
he makes a conference of my work, and he liked it very much. And it was very surprised because Diego Rivera was against universities. Remember, he was very communist. He was in the side of the polytechnics.
That's very interesting that he was involved at that level. And then when you graduated, did you go to work in an architect's office in Mexico City?
I worked for the government was a committee of building schools. A committee of schools.
Government office.
Planned the schools for the Republic.
When you were a young man, whose work did you admire?
Well, my mother.
Yeah?
My mother was really a character, as you call, because she loves to draw houses and paper, square paper. He built a lot of things. He never gave me any house to build.
No. But in the world of architecture, was there anyone?
Of course, I think Le Corbusier's first, Oscar Niemeyer, Frank Lloyd Wright, I think is the third.
Yes, I was interested to hear that because of the organic aspect of your work.
I was joking about my mother.
Yeah. Well, no, that's nice. That's nice. So you worked in a government office, and then
and I couldn't stand it to work out of enajenado. I don't know the word out of reality. I don't know the word in English, because sometimes the bureaucracy is Kafkiana, no? Like Kafka.
Yes.
We don't know why we are working for, and stereo.
You felt it wasn't the real world of architecture that you wanted to be involved in?
No, because the kind of policy is in the architecture is a fail for any architect.
So then you made a change?
I changed and I started to work by my own.
On your own?
That's right.
How old were you when you started on your own?
I think I was 26 years old.
So that was very young to begin, in your own office?
Well, a small office.
Yes. But isn't that unusual in Mexico, don't you?
No, because sometimes you have relations, social relations, in the first time of your career, and you have a lot of job, sometimes more than when you are older, because you have that opportunity of parents or a friendship of your parents. That they give you houses.
So you had opportunity to build,
to build
at a very young age.
Uh-huh.
And you did houses?
Yes. Yes, I start with houses, and I always like houses because for me it's the kind of laboratory of the architecture.
Yeah.
Because with social problems you have to think it over a little more, no? And in houses you can speculate and experiment forms, different kind of functions.
Explore ideas.
That's right.
So you did many houses through that period? Yes. And then other projects as well?
And yes, with projects on universities or hospitals. But the house is for me very interesting because you find a word in a house, no? And the identification with the client is very important. The client and then the society. No?
Yeah. Looking back now over all the different kinds of projects that you've done, which was the most satisfying?
I think it's very relative, no? Quantitative, the military school was so big, it was a big challenge to have the control of that big
project.
Big project, and for the quantitative, I think one of my office.
When was your office built?
About 4 years ago. Because my office has the sense of the military school, not in the big spaces, about the sense of pre-Hispanic forms, and it has partitions, it's all right that word, but different way of construction. No foundation at all, wires suspended.
So it's a unique structure.
Yes.
A structure. So it is a very interesting, fascinating building. When you started your practice, who was also building in Mexico? What other architects were?
Augusto Alvarez, a lot of Pani. They are older than me, but Ricardo Legorreta.
Ricardo already was building at that time, yes?
No, he was very young.
He was working.
Younger than me, but
he was working with Villagran for many years, wasn't he? Yeah. So I think you are unique that you went right into your own office.
Good.
I think you were very different from the others in that you went right into your own practice.
I think I'm very different from the others.
Right out of school. No, first the government office and then into your own practice.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very much like what young people do here. Very often.
Yes, because I don't believe in theories. I believe in practice. I think the theory is after practice.
But have you...
Before or after?
Theories first and then practice?
No, I mean practice is first, and theories.
In importance to you. But you have taught, have you not? You have been a teacher in the school?
Yes, 15 years.
Ah, so you also, through the same period, you have been practicing.
Yes.
How many years have you been in practice?
Teaching?
No, in your practice.
Like an architect? I don't want to remember so many years.
I don't think
I told you I'm born the 29th of February, so 4 years. I have 1 year.
You're a leap year architect.
I want to believe that I am very young.
Oh, that's true. That's very true.
My wife says I'm very mature.
No, you look very young. Very young.
I feel young.
So you liked Corbu when you were young. His work was published in Mexico. His books.
Yes, we can find any book you want in Mexico.
And Niemeyer.
Yes.
The work that he did in Brasilia, in Rio, you like the organic form.
Yes, I like the organic form.
No,
I have the two, maybe in pieces we are like this. No? I have a contradiction in my feelings, or not, maybe it's not a contradiction. It's the duality of what I tell you about. The pre-Hispanic, I feel I have more 80% Indian and 20% Spanish. And I have the feeling, I was telling to your husband, that there are two kind of spaces in architecture, in our architecture. Pre-Hispanic is the space of cosmic space. It was the religion of the sky. And with the conquest, we have the religion in the room, in the dark room.
Oh, that's very poetic.
So I believe more in the pre-Hispanic because it's the planning for the future. To have the eyes looking at the stars.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So the pre-Hispanic has the straight lines, the angles, but also they have the curves. There are pyramids, circular pyramids. And so really I feel more the geometric forms for a kind of planning, big plannings, master plannings. No? And for homes, I think circles are more warmy, like Marcosi. I love both.
The geometric and the circular. So
because it's geometry, no? Geometry has three aspects: the circle, the square, or the triangle. No more. There are three forms only three forms, and the combination of those three forms.
And do you feel that the beginning of that influence came out of your study of the pre-Hispanic architecture of Mexico? So that really links you.
Read a lot of pre-Hispanic. Even I read more. I think it was a great, very great people, and they have a great religion. But we know only the bad, the sacrifice of those things. But it was a very esoteric religion, very profound, and everything, even a little statue this big, has a lot of meaning. Every form, every angle, every Greco called draw has a profound philosophic meaning. Every color has a meaning too.
That's something I wanted to ask you about color. You don't use color in a painted-on way.
I don't believe in colors because I think to paint is for a painter. it's a, how you call, manual crafts.
Yes.
It's for a painter. And the color in architecture has to give, the material has their own color. We have to respect that color. If we want to change color, we can use glasses with color, marbles with color. And
So
you can see
the natural materials with the natural color.
The reflection of the carpet and the wall, you have a color, the reflection of the soot and the wall changes.
Yes. That's very interesting because of the Mexican architects who do use color, so that's really
I think it's a
divergence of view.
Scenography, to use color. I think form is so rich, but when you have form, you don't need color. You need color when there's a plain wall. You need color because you're afraid of empty spaces. Your horroris vacui, we say in Latin. Afraid of empty. Yes. I don't know translation.
No, that's very good. No, that's wonderful. But you're working also with this sculptural quality in your work. That when you use a curved form.
Well, I think architecture has to be sculpture. I don't believe in sculpture. I think the sculpture has to be functional. Sculpture is a car. Sculpture is an airplane, a rocket. I think it's to have sculptures, to make a sculpture is a waste of time. It's only commerce. It's only merchandise. I think architecture could be always a sculpture, a living sculpture.
Sculpture that people live in.
That's the only way to integrate the arts and to make it sculpture architecture, and not to put sculpture inside the architecture. I talk to my pupils sometimes. You see beautiful women, and they say, "Well, it's not so beautiful. Let's put him a little, how you call it, aretes?
Earring?
Earring, or here a little."
To decorate.
To decorate. No, she doesn't need anything.
How do you feel about the work of Frank Lloyd Wright? Which of his works did you really enjoy?
He was a really genius. He was a mutante. I don't know the word. He belongs for the 20th century, 21st century. No? He was out of his time. Really, he's fantastic.
Which projects did you especially admire?
His houses,
Guggenheim Museum. Yeah, that was, yeah.
I think he's one of the greatest architects.
Yeah, well, I think we look at him that way too, as probably the most influential of the American architects in the world, certainly, and one of the greatest. I would agree with you on that. But I do see a similarity in some of the forms. Yeah. You know, so I was curious as to...
Because he was a man, very, he was visual, he wanted to discover and to look in the ancient architectures, forms, he loves Mayas, no? And the Guggenheim, yes, suppose I remember my hospital, that's circular.
Yes.
It's a pyramid, Calislahuaca, that way.
Inverted?
It's not Guggenheim, it's a pyramid this way. It's a circular pyramid near Mexico City. It's circular that way. 4 floors.
So your influence was closer
to the pre-Hispanic.
Yes. Yes. What else is important to you?
Maybe cars. Other things important.
Yeah. In design.
Design. But I think life is so important. If we think only in architecture, we don't make anything. I think we have to be interested in life and then in architecture to realize ourselves, our human beings, and then after that, like architects.
You're interested in dance also.
But I like to dance, but
but like modern dance, you mentioned
yes,
Nicolai.
Yes,
Yes, as another art
everything was
form.
connected with space.
Yeah.
I like.
Well, ¿qué más? We were 5 minutes.
I don't know.
It's, yeah, I got it. It's really wonderful that you took the time to come and visit us, especially after your trip to Europe. And it's a very nice time.
Perhaps I have always a foot, how you call it, in a plane, not to find a place.
Yeah.
I love to travel.
Yeah. Well, it's very nice of you to come and share your work with us. We're very pleased to have you here. Hope it will be a good stay. I'm speaking this evening with two very important architects who are visiting with us from Mexico City at SCI-Arc. Abraham Zabludovsky on my right and Teodoro González de León on my left. And they represent what I feel to be the new generation of architects like Vasquez Ramirez said, right, in Mexico. Those who came up through the new university, the National University. I was very interested to hear Enrique Del Moral discuss how when he was working on the master plan, he worked with the senior class. And I understand both of you were in that class who worked on that master plan. Do you have any memories of that experience, or?
Yes.
Would you share them with us?
Because very special memories. The National University was a national competition, and there was only 5 entries. Only 5 architects get in
made entries.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we, like students, we were very, it was 1946. We were very sad to see all the work of our teachers in the entries. Mm-hmm. It was very sad.
You were disappointed?
Yes, and we formed a little group of 3 students and make a proposition who at final was accepted, and very, my English is very good, very difficult.
It's all right.
At the end, they pick our ideas in the final plan. Mm-hmm. It was a very Corbusier idea. And but I think the central point of our idea was the central point of the development of the urban planning. Mm-hmm. At the end.
Mm-hmm. Were you also involved in that, Abraham?
No, Teodoro was involved. I haven't been. I only was involved looking at that. I look all.
The critic.
No. I was very exciting because I looked all the process. You know, I was involved to looking the process.
Yes,
I know everything about this. It was a very exciting time because the students fight against the teachers, and the teachers, they felt like it was an insult to his large activities, professional, that some few young people can make some how do you say, fight new ideas and to these big masters. And it was very exciting time, very, very exciting. For all of us was very exciting, yes. That's true.
Enrique did speak about that.
Yes.
That the student plan was, that they did it together. So that was,
they say that?
yeah.
It's okay. That's it.
Yeah.
That's a good approach.
He talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the students were working on it, and that I
Yes.
was very impressed to hear that.
It was a challenge for the teachers, you know. It was a challenge.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting to comment. In these times, we were about 60 in each group, in about 300 people in the school, and we discussed our qualifications with the teachers. Why you put that? Why do you say this bad that? And I think this relation with the teachers was very interesting for the formation of the. It's not now the school in Mexico is very sad because they have about 5,000 people.
Very large, yes.
They can't do anything.
After this fight with the teachers, we all of us become very good friends of the same teachers. Years after years, no?
Yeah.
Yes.
After they accepted it.
After they accepted it, it was
Yeah.
it was not very easy. All the
So Pani and Del
Yes, Pani and
Moral
Del
were
Moral
those
were-
who were challenged by it.
More together, yes.
So that is interesting to hear him talk about it with pride now.
yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, it's a few years later, so it's easier to look back on it.
It's many years.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
it's many years.
Yes, of course.
But it was a time that it was very difficult, the relations, no?
Yes,
The relation was broken.
absolutely broke.
Yes.
And I think in my case, I left the school in these years.
This time.
I had a beca, is a fellowship to develop the French government
Yes.
to study in France, and I forgot the Mexican school. I never went to school, not to teach, not to finish, because the relation was very, very angry, very tense.
But now it's all right.
Yes.
The times cleans everything.
Yes, with time.
With time.
Time, we say time heals all wounds.
Yes.
But after graduation, you immediately became involved in development, is that right?
Yes, I began to work in construction, in buildings, before I finished. Before, yes, I was involved in building some houses, some small buildings. Yes, many times like not only like an architect, no, but like a builder, and like many things. It was a very hard time, yes, because I was studying to do everything. But it was very a good discipline because.
And a good learning, I would think.
Yes,
a good learning.
a good learning. Yes, it gives you an idea of all the different phases of the construction, not only the project. Yes, the construction, the economical point of view, and many things.
And then you began to work on client projects,
Yes,
and you began your practice of architecture.
of course. But after this,
What year was that about that you began your practice?
Well, I think it was about
the early 50s.
no, the early 50s, 1952, 1951.
So it was very early.
Yes, in these years. Begin. Well, you also begin these years, no? You
Yes.
come back, it's 51, 52, and I began to build some apartment buildings and houses. In this time I built a lot of houses, but now I don't build many houses. I think it's very difficult to build a house.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
And after graduation, you had your trip to Paris?
No, I graduated
Yes.
very late. I came from Paris and I don't finish the school.
So you
Yeah.
left before graduation?
yeah.
I see. And
Yeah.
you had a very exciting
I
adventure
had
in
2
Paris?
years with Le Corbusier,
Yes.
and then I came, and I didn't feel to finish the school after the experience of Le Corbusier.
Yes, well, that was like that was like continuing at a graduate level to work in the atelier of Le Corbusier.
I
would
wanted
think.
to build, and I have a chance to build a house, a big residence of about 1,000 square meters. It's about in
10,000
10,000 square feet.
Square feet?
And we made this large residence absolutely prefabricated in 3 years of work, like a laboratory. I learned to build. I think it was a very good experience. A magnificent client. He thought we can do the things.
That's wonderful, wonderful
Incredible.
experience. The time was just right for you.
Yes.
Do you have that?
It was a big 3 years in this experiment house.
That was,
He's still alive, the house.
yes, living
Yeah.
in the house?
Yes, and the client lives.
Wonderful. So it worked well for him.
He likes it because he amused doing that.
When you were just beginning your practice, who were the architects that you admired? What work did you look at and were you influenced by?
Well, you see, in that time it began, of course, in the architecture school in Mexico. It began the big influence of the works of Le Corbusier. In that time came the books and all the things. And of course, he was the biggest influence in our studies. And in that time also, I think we have some special look for Oscar Niemeyer works where he began.
Yeah.
His first work was very, very successful and very published in this time. And of course, we was involved with all the teacher that was teaching us in Mexico, and they was building in that time a lot of things.
So the faculty were also practicing architecture,
Yes, the
doing
teachers,
important work.
the teachers of the school was in that time Del Moral, Pani, Augusto Alvarez, and they was building all Mexico. They was building a lot of work. I think that between us, an architect like Mario Pani, I think that it's very few people in the world that can afford to build the size of the thing that he was building in that time. Well, all this has a big influence of us, of course. Later, of course, we took a big critic of these things.
Yeah.
Later, a few years later, when we
Had more experience.
when we had more experience and when we saw another things in the world and another things in the book, and we studied more deep, we see something that I didn't like too much, and I was very critical after this.
Yeah.
After this, but in the time of the school, I think that they have a big influence of us, all these people. We cannot say only that it's it's nothing. It was a big influence, and they had a time that they have their time in Mexican architecture, and this was the time. And there was also the School of Architecture had in that time 6 teachers of design, and all these 6 people was the 6 main teachers.
Yeah.
That's very understandable. That.
Yeah. And your influences?
Well,
Similar?
Similar, but I think it begins in the middle of the 50s. One influence was, for me, very important, the work of Mies van der Rohe. I finished the influence of Le Corbusier in the middle of the... I begin to learn the work of Mies van der Rohe, because we were very involved with the prefabrication and with the modules and all that. That was a period of about 5 or 8 years. We were very involved with the work of Mies van der Rohe and the work of systems and modular design and all that. Now I don't think like that, but it was a very good experience. And in the other way, we had the influence of Le Corbusier in the urban and planning. We made many studies of cities of Mexico to planos reguladores, we call a regulation plan of one city.
Like a master plan.
Master plan. And that was very disappointing at the end, because the work of urban planning, the authorities who put these plans in action don't see anything of our plans. Nobody of our, nothing of our work. We made 2 plans together with them. Perhaps it was the first work we made together.
We came together again
Yes, that was the
after
first.
the school. Yes, it
So
was
that was about
in the early 60s.
early 60s.
Yes, it
right.
was to plan in 2 big oil cities now. It was in this time also oil cities. And I think that after these 20 years, they are worse now than it was in that time. But
Yes.
a lot
Nothing happened with our studies.
No, a lot of work.
But nobody cares with these studies. Nobody is involved in really change the city, the scenery of our life, of daily life.
They were avant-garde for the time.
But now it's the same, I think.
It
in Mexico.
was an avant-garde. I think it was a time that some people was involved in this. It was the moment that it was involved, some of the politicians, that it was politicians, that they was architects and they was involved with architecture. And maybe they sincerely thought to do something. But when it was to take some measures to practice this, I think that they couldn't afford. It was against many interests, against the local interest and against everything.
So it was
I
too
think
political.
that it's
Too political.
I think it's a political and economical thing. No,
Yeah,
it's
well, we have
it's
the
all the
same-
system.
The same problems. Those
Yes,
are
all the world is the
problems.
same problem.
Yes, exactly.
The same problem.
It's not I am sure that all these master plans is not a problem of architecture. It's like when we speak about that the cities is growing too fast and we must take smaller cities. It's not a problem of architects. It's a problem of another people, of politicians, of economicals, of regulation, of master plan. But master plan not in the design, master plan in economical and administrative point of view. I think that the same thing is this. The design of a master plan comes at the final. It's involved with many other things that it's stronger. I think it's the reason because we couldn't afford anything.
Yeah.
I think the architect must to find the scale of his work in this kind of work. When he is trying to make urban design, if he makes a big scale plan, I think it's bad that, because nobody can
Implement it?
that. It's out of scale.
Yes.
I think the clever in this for the architects to find the scale of the work. I can control this part, and the promoter is a scale of this. That's a problem. And I think it's going to be it's have to be very interesting for the school to teach that, to teach which is the scale of the work in this kind of.
Well, in this time was also the big influence of Brasilia. You understand that it's everybody thought that it's very easy to make a new city.
It's a outer scale city.
Yes, yes, but outer scale, yes, of course, but they needed the city. And that was the reason, because everybody, but everybody thought that it's very easy to make a city like this, and a city like Brasilia, good or bad, I don't want to go involved now in this, but it's only one city in a life, or in a life of a country. It's how many cities do you have in the world that it's begin from nothing? 2 cities, 3 cities each.
One in Latin America, all America, one.
Or Washington, maybe 2 or 3.
Really?
Yes, but each
Washington is in the 70s.
Yes, but it's each. That's what I am telling. It's each century. Each century. And here we made alone with one institution 2, but with the other institution I think that 10 more. Another architects made about, between all the architects, they made about 100 or 150 master plans of cities of Mexico, with all the studies and all the approach and economical studies. You know everything that you can say.
Had a big multidisciplinary
with economists,
but it's nothing. It's nothing.
But the impact
That's
was
it.
not
Only
felt.
loss of time. Yeah, it's terrible.
So you went
And
on
we
to...
put many hours of work in this. Wow.
So then you went on to architectural projects.
of course,
always we.
After this, well, not only this, we are always was involved with construction, architecture, and after this, I think when all these plans was not successful, it was a failed. Well, it came the other president, and always the other president changed the point of view many times that the first president, because this is a combination of when we saw that everything doesn't work. Well, we began to go in a more practical point of view to look how to build, and we approached some things more in scale, like Teodoro says, and we have a good luck that the first big work was the towers of Miscuac, all the development, the complex of 2,100 apartments. And I think this was the big stone that we approached the big projects. I think that it was a good step ahead, this project.
This was the beginning of your collaboration.
Well, I think, and not only in a collaboration, I think our position in to make big projects in Mexico, position to make big projects, because it was a very successful approach, very, very successful, and it's not usual that the housing of the government are successful, because it's very many things involved. It's not only a good design, but a good economical approach. That's very important. And we took there a good economical approach. It was the combination between the use of the land and the number of the apartment and the density and all this.
And we were lucky with very good administrators.
With very good administrators. It was a wonderful administrator that he has he believed in us in that time,
Yeah.
and he was a wonderful. And he was involved. This administrator, he was involved always in housing, and now he's also involved in something like real estate, and he's a very clever man, and he understands our point of view, and that was the beginning. After this, maybe I want to tell you an anecdote. I don't know if it is true, but I heard this. I think that you heard this. When it was to decide who is going to build the building of Infonavit, that's the housing, the housing institution for the workers for housing. Somebody told us, I don't know if it is true, but I will tell you, that they discussed who is going to build this, and they discussed that the people that made and designed the most successful apartment housing in workers, it's logical that they design the main building of the workers' housing. I don't know if it is true, but it's very nice to hear. Yes, that's...
Something that's very
yes.
interesting to me is the way your collaboration has developed through the years, that you do projects independently, then you come together on important projects that you want to share. Would you like to describe that?
And it's not, we don't make all the works together. We make only that we want to compartir, what is in, to share.
Yes.
Yes. All the works who came from the same client, we share automatically. But we are not obligated to.
I think it's a very interesting arrangement. We
Yeah.
we have not heard about that here.
Yes, many people are very strange about this arrangement, but we think that it's worked. It's worked, no? Because we think that when you have a complete partnership in all the things in the office and in the secretary, in the wasted, you will have some frictions. It's logical. Frictions, so it's logical. You can, with your best friend, you will have, because if the telephone is busy, you want to speak and some details like this, but if everybody has his own secretary, his own telephone, his own office, you don't have any reason to have any problems, no? That is one way. And the other way is that you don't have any obligation to share
certain things you want to develop alone. Because your client is very close to you, or you want to develop in a very creative thing, very personal, creative motive.
Right. So by keeping your office separate,
Yes.
by having some independent projects, by collaborating when you choose to,
when we
you
choose
keep that collaboration fresh
Yes.
and interesting
Yeah.
and enjoyable. That's a very, very interesting concept.
And also it gives us chance to have always young people or new people that bring new ideas, and you discuss with them ideas, and it's in a personal, in a small point of view, not in a like a big institution or like the big firms. No, always in a small scale.
It sounds really wonderful. And it seems obviously to be very successful with the two of you.
Well,
I appreciate your coming and talking with us, and I thank you very much.
Thank you to you.
we appreciate your interest in this.
Yes.
And thank you.
With Teodoro González de León, who has been visiting at SCI-Arc this week. And we're talking a little bit about the 2 years that Senor González de León spent in Paris. And I think it all started when you won a scholarship from the French government when you were a student at the National University, is that right?
Yes, I had one scholarship from the government of France. And it was very libre, free, very free. You can do anything in this scholarship, because I was first in the Beaux-Arts school, but I didn't like it. I had in my mind Corbusier.
Of course.
But I spent about a month in school. Then I changed to the École des Travaux Publics. It's a school of technicians of concrete. They sobre todo, especially with concrete. You know, France have or had, I don't know now, very, very good engineers.
Yes.
Always the
French
in
engineers.
the last century and now they had very good engineers, but there was very specialized for me. This then I couldn't believe it that I could travel work with Corbusier, but when I realized that the School of Beaux-Arts and it was very bad for me, and the École des Travaux Publics was very specialized, very complicated to me. Then I knocked the door on Transac Rue de Sèvres, in front of the Bon Marché.
Yes, that famous address.
The magazine who was designed by Eiffel.
I feel.
And I enter and I ask for work, and they put up to work immediately, the same day.
Marvelous.
I was working there. It was very disappointed, the environment to me, because it was early 48, yes, and the traces of the war was very evident.
Yes.
The ceiling was tela, fabric, but
Cloth.
like that.
Yes. Yes.
Incredible. Or with water leaking.
Oh.
The atelier was in a space of about 30 meters. It's 90 feet by 14 feet wide. That's all. One space with windows and one sense and one side to a court. It was an old structure.
Was it a
an old structure of a monastery. They had they compartían
the partition.
No, there was monks.
Still.
Yes.
Still using it.
One part of the
part of it.
the structure was
still the monastery.
Yes.
And part was the office, the atelier.
And it was very interesting because you knocked the door and was a little paper in the door. Le Corbusier au fond du couloir. Le Corbusier in the end of the corridor. That's the sign.
That was it.
Right at hand. And I said, in this place, this man changed the architecture of the world. What?
Yes, with the little handwritten sign in the monastery.
In this place? He was making the plans of Marseille, because it was Claudius Petit.
Yes.
Was the minister, he was the friend of Corbusier,
Yes.
Claudius Petit. And he was making the plans of Marseille. And from the war until these plans, he had money to replace, to renovate it,
the office.
The office.
The atelier. Yeah.
And he put all us in different houses.
While the construction was going on?
While the construction, 2 months.
Oh.
And for me it was formidable because he took me to his house.
Ah, yes.
And then I work with him all the mornings in his house. I look his private life, 2 months. It was very interesting.
It's on the rue Nungesser École? On the rue
Nungesser Colli. Nungesser Colli is the name of two pilots. Yes, very famous. He was dead in the 20s.
In the crash.
The early, like Limber, at the same time.
We went to visit that house last year with a group of students. And there's an architect working there, Wojanski.
Wojanski lives, he was living there, but after many critics, he
moved out?
He moved, and he put only his atelier.
Office, yes.
Yes. I think it's not good taste to live in the same house of Le Corbusier.
But he was very gracious about allowing us to come and visit.
He's a very nice person.
And we didn't meet him, but we...
He was in the same time. Yes. Wojanski, yes.
He was an apprentice at the same time?
No, he was the chief atelier.
He was the chief.
Yes, okay. Wojanski. He was there in the same time. Wobiansky, the engineer.
Yes.
Nikos, the engineer. Salmona. Serralta.
Salmona, they are...
Salmona Salmona is Colombian.
Bogota.
Yes, it make
the brick.
Yes, many structures. He's very good architect, Salmona.
Salmona, yes.
And George Candelis.
At the same time.
George Candelis is a very good architect.
It was an exciting time to be there, working on
woods.
Woods.
And Alfonso, Nadir Afonso, is a painter and architect, Portuguese. Very good.
So it was an international group.
Absolutely international. There were only one French. It's very important that because that you can imagine the ambient of Le Corbusier in France. No response. When all the time I was there, all the days, it was a visit from any part of the world. At least one person went to see Le Corbusier to sign a book or to work or only to see Le Corbusier.
To make a pilgrimage.
Yes, but no French people. International people from all the world, not from France. That's a very sad problem.
Yes. Do you think he was bothered by that?
Oh yes, I think yes, absolutely.
He felt he wasn't appreciated by his own people.
It was true. It was really.
Yes.
It was not appreciated in France.
Did that change after the Marseille block was constructed? Was there a favorable reaction to that
perhaps, but
within the country?
I don't know that because...
You weren't there after it was open. Did you actually work on the drawings of
I began with drawing technical drawings of structural drawings. in this section of structural. But I said to me, let's do these drawings very well to notice.
Yes.
Then I made very good drawings of the pilotis, of the iron bars, of the pilotis of the Marseille building. Then Le Corbusier noticed the drawing, put this man in this section and the other section. Then I go to the architectural section
So
in about 1 week.
You attracted his attention with your good drawing. Wonderful. Was that the only project that you worked on?
No. We were working in the first croquis, the first studies of the Ronchamp chapel.
Ah, wonderful.
It was a very long work, the Ronchamp chapel.
Yes, because it was done in the 50s.
Yeah. And a little shop. He don't realize.
No,
He
was
don't.
not executed, was not built.
And a little shop to sell shoes. It's,
Oh, the Bali shop.
The Bali shop.
Yes.
The ballet shop, and in the same place of the Mallettes Sevens had make the ballet.
It was to redo
It was
the
absolutely destroyed
one. It was the one that Mallet
with the war.
did.
Yes.
Ah.
Then Corbusier want to make in this place he loves the work of Mallettes Sevens.
Yes?
Yes, they said. No, we were
Friends?
no, we were very
Surprised?
surprised of that,
Yes. That he
because
respected
he never say anything of any architect.
That's very interesting.
Never.
Yeah.
He say very good things of Mallettes Sevens.
That's very interesting. I wondered about that because his work, the main body of work that Mallet Stevens did, was very close to the La Roche
Yes.
Jeanneret house.
Two
just
houses.
Around the
Yes,
corner.
just around the corner.
And I wondered how they related, and so that's very interesting to hear you say that.
And if you see the numbers of the L'Esprit Nouveau, there are many works of Mallettes Stevens published in the Esprit Nouveau review, who managed Le Corbusier.
Yes.
Then I know later that they had good relations. But this little shop was very interesting because they in this shop, Le Corbusier don't have structural work. Then it's only plaster work. It's very interesting, this
Interior development.
interior. And
Interesting he would want to do that.
yes,
Such a small little
Yeah.
job at that time.
it's absolutely decorative, art décoratif. Il disait ça.
Yeah.
He told them, art décoratif, c'est de l'art décoratif, ça.
And so that was developed during the time that you were in the atelier?
Yes. I was charged with the design of the drawings. And the Atelier Duval in Saint-Dié.
Yes.
It's a little factory in 4 stories with brise-soleil
In concrete?
concrete and many colors in the interior. It's very nice little building, industrial building. In Saint-Dié. And of this work, Saint-Dié and Marseille, we were also sent to the work.
To supervise?
Yes. That was very interesting because in Marseille, we sent with the Candelis was the chief of supervisor.
Yes.
And he took me, and we spent 2 weeks in Marseille. I think we had a very interesting experience there, because the Corbusier never, it was the early beginning of the work. The 2 first pilotis poured in place.
Ah, so they were done 2 by 2?
We were desolated when we see the take out of the forms.
When they took the forms
yes.
off, the pattern of the wood.
Yes, we see the work very
crude.
Very, I don't want to use the word brutal, because the Corbusier took the...
Yes, he coined the word.
We made a report, and we sent to the Corbusier. The Corbusier went. He never said anything. He saw, and he took the Italian contractor. Very good. Like that. I like that. The concrete talk now. It was a lesson for us.
You were surprised that he liked it. He liked that.
It was the beginning of the brutalism.
He liked the sculptural aspect of it.
Yes, and the brutal aspect, because the difference in the wood is not half an inch. It was 1 inch. The difference of depth.
So it really was very strong.
Strong and very bad done. Yeah. Very.
But that didn't bother him.
No.
It was a crude kind of
yes.
job. But maybe he was excited by that strong pattern.
Because with the light and very good shadows.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
was a very good experience, and I think that was the beginning of the brutalism. That's the first work in the world of this kind of treatment in the concrete. All the architects, the Smithsons with the theater, all they going to see that.
Surely. So it wasn't something that he had intended to produce initially.
Perhaps not, but
it developed by chance, and he responded to it. And
it's like when a painter make a mistake with a color, and what he make rapidly, and he transformed the mistake in a good thing.
Yes.
I think it's the same.
Yes.
What Le Corbusier
that's a wonderful,
did in this moment.
Story.
Well, we spent 2 years there. I think it's very unforgettable.
I'm sure.
To know this man, yes.
How did he relate to you on a personal level?
I think very well. But he was very serious, but he very sad people. He was not very sad. Really serious and sad.
His nature was
yes,
very serious.
Not sad, not serious, sad.
More than serious. Interesting. So focused on his work.
Always.
Was there never a gay side to him? Never a happy aspect of his personality? Always very deeply involved with what he was doing and caring passionately about everything.
No jokes.
No jokes.
Irony, yes.
Yes?
Yes, but cruel. That's all.
To people he knew well. With people who he knew well. The jokes.
No jokes, irony.
Oh. But he was nice to you.
Yes, I think.
Kind to you. I think you said he was
very
kind to you.
me. I have very good letters from him.
Yes, letters of recommendation?
No, letters from...
To him?
Yeah.
From him to you?
Yeah. And very good drawings.
Yes?
He gave me.
Wonderful. How about his painting? Were you around when he was painting?
Because I was 2 months with him in his house. I saw the way he worked. The Corbusier don't work in architecture in the morning. He took, at 7 o'clock, he
took a walk? He ran?
He ran.
Like the joggers?
Yes, because do you remember in the front of New Jersey College,
yes.
It was a stadium.
Yes.
He crossed the street, and he
would take a run.
Take a run 1 kilometer.
Very good.
At 7 o'clock. He take his breakfast, his petit déjeuner, and he spent
croissant.
only café croissant. And he spent 1 hour or 2 to respond letters. He was a writer.
Yes.
Don't forget.
Yes.
Then he began to paint until
every day.
Every day until 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. He had the breakfast. And
no, that's all right.
No?
He was just giving me a sign for the time.
He took his lunch time, and after the lunch, he went to the atelier. He arrived about 2:30 or 3 until 8 or 8:30. That was his day.
That's very interesting.
He was a writer, painter, an architect.
Right.
And if you want to, he was a sportsman.
Yeah, the running.
The running.
Well, that had to do with his good health, keeping himself healthy.
Yes. But he didn't know his health was bad.
Well, but look how long he lived.
Yes, he was a very good dad.
It was good until then.
To die in the sea is wonderful.
Yes, yeah. A very
in
poetic,
the summer.
a very poetic ending.
But at the end, he was very, very alone. Because his wife was dead.
Yes.
And he didn't want to see any person. Because George Candidis told me, each week I telephone, hello George, no, I don't want to see you.
So he closed.
Oh, come, but only 10 minutes. And he was really bad, completely alone. I didn't see it, only I have letters of this period, but Candidis told me of these last years that was good for him. But nobody knows.
No, that was his choice at that time.
Yes.
And at least the end was quick. And very poetic, I think.
Very good.
I think he would have liked that.
Very good.
To have that. It was, I'm sure, a wonderful period in your life to have spent there.
I think so.
And it's very kind of you to share some of these stories and memories with us, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you.
I'm talking this evening with Augusto Alvarez, here visiting at SCI-Arc from Mexico City. And as always, I'm interested in the beginning years. You were graduated from the National University before it moved.
Yes.
So it's the
I
old
was in
school?
I was in the school of the traditional school from the end of the 19th century, and it has a very good image all over the university, because it was certain special things and that make a traditional aspect of the architect in Mexico. And before that, I'm sure that some of my colleagues have said, is that this school was a byproduct of the engineering school, and but as a reaction against the engineering school, the architects try to show themselves as very particular subjects. Then they start making a certain ceremony that was called the, how do you name nacimiento?
Birth?
Yes,
or anniversary?
Yes, well, yes. It's sort of
a celebration.
A celebration, because the new ones, the
incoming students.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I heard about that. With
yes.
the parade?
Yes,
yes,
the parade and the well, some activities that are, some of them very graceful, but some others, yeah, with the development of the school, when we were more people, was well, in some way not very agreeable.
Were you a student of José Villagran?
Yes, I was. When I entered the school, José Villagran was the dean of the school. He was very famous for these years, because he was undoubtedly he was the beginner of the new movement of architecture in our country. And
so he influenced the young people.
Yes, and when Villagran was dean, the entire schedule of studies was changed, was modernized, and I suppose it makes a point of departure for the new schools developed after this. As you know, the School of Architecture in those years was a copy of the School of Beaux-Arts.
As all our schools
Paris,
were as well.
And we start as students of Beaux-Arts, making the same kind of work, making large drawings, large copies of
the classical subjects.
The classic subjects, and also the classic buildings of the Renaissance, Gothic era. But it was very interesting, as I suppose that this kind of thing, this transition, was very well. I have a philosophy that if you get every day just a little step ahead, you are making something. Then maybe in a lifetime you can't achieve this, but you are trying to do it. It's better than to forget that we are human beings that live in an architecture that we create. That's the worst thing. We are not machines. We have, how do you say, some aspirations and defects and bad habits or many things, but you must take care of them. If you don't care about this, you aren't making architecture. Architecture is a service task. Architecture is a service task, not any other thing.
Well, I think that's a very positive note on which to conclude our little discussion.
Right.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank
It's
you.
been a pleasure.
Thank you.